What's up, witches?
What's up?
I'm Linda.
And I'm John.
And this is Getting Witchy. And tonight we are talking about
The Mayan.
gods and goddesses.
Amazing. I just have to say, we're not really going to get into much of the mythos or the stories of the different gods, just like we couldn't do with the Chinese pantheon. Right. We could touch on a few of them, the most popular or more popular. And we didn't even mention that they have an annual festival for the Yellow Emperor, where they go through a certain area, obviously just a region of China, with the dragon. Mm-hmm. And they release the dragon to symbolize his ascension back into the heavens. So, yes, this is another pantheon that, based on non-traditional or, what's the word for, God damn it. Restart. Yeah, we can't rewind. It's not pseudoscience, because it's not make-believe, because the people talked about it. But this is another culture that believed in the Sky Brothers, that many of their myths kind of describe what we would call an otherworldly encounter. For instance, the sarcophagus of Lord Pakal. Look it up. I have it here for you. I'm going to try to hold it up to where it's not really going to come through clearly on that. No, it's not. Look up the sarcophagus of Lord Pakal. And it's spelled Pakal. Now, traditional archaeologists, or mainstream, that's what I was thinking. That's the word I was thinking. Non-mainstream. So the mainstream archaeologists will tell you that this is an image of Lord Pakal ascending to the heavens to be reborn. But if you look at the actual image that is there.
This is the one with the breathing apparatus, and he's working the petals. And...
Yes. So around the border of the sarcophagus is supposedly, and I can't read Mayan, so I'm just going off of multiple references, his date of birth, a little bit about his life, his death. Then there's references to the sun and the moon. And there's references to other royalty that he interacted with, or nobility, not royalty, nobility. And then if you look at the picture, it does not look like, it does not look to me to be someone that is being reborn. He has a breathing apparatus that is going to his nose. He has he's in a seated position, and he is working levers with his hands, and you can see one of his feet is working a lever. And then if you look at the very bottom, just before the outside border talks about those things that I mentioned, but you look between the apparatus that he's sitting in and the border, it looks like flames. So, they're trying to say that that's an image of his rebirth. There's nothing about that, if you look at it with modern eyes, that screams to me rebirth or reincarnation or ascending to the heavens. Yes. Shut up, Hope. Sorry, that's our fish that likes to. We have a couple pieces of lava rock sitting on top.
Because she likes to jump up and hit the lid of her tank and splash water out.
Yeah.
And cause all sorts of mayhem.
Yeah, she almost started a fire and killed the other one that we had, just like her. His name was John. Not related to me.
No, they were named after my parents.
But anyway, that was what that knock was. So this is one of those pantheons that if you talk to some archaeologists that are working down there and the people, they are pretty clear that their ancestors and creators were not of this earth. Neither was God by the Judeo-Christian concept. But God didn't come down in a fiery chariot.
Or in a dragon.
Or in a dragon, yeah. So anyway, the pantheon of the Mayan is a huge assortment of deities worshipped throughout the regions of Yucatan, Quintana Roo. Quintana Roo. I'm sorry, that's right. The I is always an E. Is that Campeche? Campeche, Tabasco, and Chiapas. And then further south into or through Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and Honduras. These gods influenced the lives and rituals of the people that they established order and provided hope for this life as well as a life after death. And they encompassed every aspect of life. There were some, what?
I was just thinking about when I was reading over your research.
Oh. There were somewhere in the range of about 250 different deities, named deities. They had but it was a changeable pantheon. A deity could be both male and female.
Mm-hmm.
Good and evil. And their gods oversaw every aspect of life. I mean, from birth, there's the ball game. That there's a big story about the ball game with creation with the twins. There's actually two sets of twins related to the ball game. Gambling. They had a god for travelers and traders, for pregnant women and infants, for the young, for the aged, for health, and for suicide. But then they had gods for nature, wild nature, agriculture, a god of maize, which is corn for the uninitiated white folk. Well, could be black folk too, but not likely. And a god of thunder, who would take his axe and strike lightning into the clouds to make them rain. What does that sound like?
Thor.
And of course they have creator gods, gods of destruction. I think there were, well, in some resources that I found, there were 4 creator gods, but then in others there were 6. However, then in a third resource, it gave 2 of the 4 a second name. There was the original, and then another name, like another aspect of it. I think that's the whole. What I got from that was that's the whole. It could be male or female. But they all had very human traits, and would do both good and evil, just like humans. One thing that I found in the research is that not every god was worshipped in every region, and certainly not by the same name, if they were worshipped in other regions.
Right.
Because you had the northern Maya and you had the southern. What was that? The Quiche. There was the Quiche region, which I think was southern, Central America, and then let's go dark. and the Yucatec Mayan. They had different words for the underworld. One was, would you call that Sibaba?
Shibaba.
Shibaba. And the other one was like Matlan.
Metnal.
So even within the Mayan culture, they had different names for different gods. There were also gods of the home, gods of the hearth, just like in some of the others.
Mm-hmm.
I think Freya wasn't she? A god of hearth and home?
Freya was the goddess of love and war. If you can't lay him, slay him.
Hearth and home. Anyway, so the Mayans believed that everything in existence had what they called divine or sacredness. There were two different terms for it: the Ka'u, which was K apostrophe UH, or the Ka'u Klan or Ka'u Kla. I don't have the actual total spelling for that, but it was K apostrophe UH and then KLA, I think maybe an apostrophe and an H. I didn't take note of that, but two different words meaning the same thing based on the region you were in. Yeah. And then let's not talk about Kukulkan, the feathered serpent in
Right.
Maya, but Quetzalcoatl, which was the feathered serpent in the Aztec
Right.
belief system. So, I mean, there was a lot of crossover. It's fascinating, especially the story of creation. Man was created, humans were created out of maize. In many stories I found, it was white and yellow maize
Mm-hmm.
that was crushed up and then made into a paste, and the creator gods made us out of the maize.
Okay.
But anyway, so these are just a few of the more than 250 gods and goddesses, but I've noticed most of them are gods. There's only a couple goddesses, which I found kind of interesting, comparative to Greek, Roman, Norse, and Celtic,
Right.
where it was almost even. Would you like to?
Okay, so
Are we going to spell these or just try to pronounce them horribly?
So
You probably do better than I am.
We'll do both.
Okay.
It's Itzamna, Itzamna with the little accent
Yeah.
thing on it. Was believed to be the main deity of the Mayan pantheon, the god of creation, the celestial sovereign of day and night, a harbinger of wisdom, and the patron of the arts, sciences, and the one that brought writing to the Maya.
But there's also something I read where Kukulkan did that. Or the Aztecs, I think, said that Quetzalcoatl did. It's a fascinating thing. Go ahead, next.
Kukulkan,
Mm-hmm.
also known as Quetzalcoatl by the Aztecs. The feathered serpent or plumed serpent deity symbolized the union between earth and sky, ruling over the domains of wind, air, and knowledge. He was also a knowledge bringer and part of the Mayan creation story.
Right, and then would that be Chaac? Chaac?
Because there's no apostrophe, I think it might just be Chalk.
Chalk. Like Chaac. If you want to know that reference for that little joke, that inside joke, you need to watch Stargate. Deep into the series, they run across a race called the Unas. But anyway, so did you say Chalk?
Chalk.
Chalk was a god of rain. He held the key to agricultural prosperity and wielded he wielded the lightning axe to force the clouds to drop rain. And then Cox. Yum.
I'm going to
It's
say...
YUM space KAAX. So you pronounce that at your leisure.
I'm going to say Yum Cox.
Okay. The patron deity of the untamed wilderness, the wilds. And agriculture, another agricultural god. And of course the natural world. He safeguarded the flora and fauna and was the patron overseer of crops and creatures, and apparently loved by farmers.
So wait. He was the god of both the wild nature and agriculture?
And tamed. Apparently, I'm just going off the research that I did from indigenous.
He must have been very tired.
Much of my research, or all of my research, came from, there was one young lady that was going to the University of Delaware that found a statue of the maize god in the library, I think, of the university, that spoke about something that I'm going to talk about next. But then the other two were like the World Almanac or World Encyclopedia and the British, the fucking colonizers of the world, that they're so fucking, Anyway, so the next one is Hunapu. It's HUN space HUNAHPU. He is the maize god, the god of corn. So the story in which he became the maize god is that he was one of the original twins. There were sacred twins in Mayan mythos. Him and his brother loved playing the ball game. Now, if I remember correctly, the ball game is, say, a court about the size of a football field, maybe a little bit smaller. It's not like I've been to one. But at the center, like the 50-yard line, there were two stone hoops, kind of like basketball nets, but without the net, sticking out of the wall. And they loved the ball game. They played it constantly. Unfortunately for them, the court for the ball game was directly over the main area of the underworld. And the gods of the underworld, there were two of them, did not appreciate and like all the noise that the twins were creating. They were having a good freaking time. It's just like the old Karen calling the police because the boys are playing basketball.
The old man yelling to get off my lawn.
Yeah. So the gods of the underworld challenged them to a ball game, and from what I could find, there was nothing about what they would gain from the challenge. I think maybe their egos might have been like, we're going to beat the gods of the underworld type of thing. I don't know, because I did not, of 3 different references I found, none of them talked about what was offered to them to play against the gods of the underworld.
Gotcha.
But the gods of the underworld had many tricks, traps, and other things set up for them that they weren't prepared for, and they died. However, and they were called one Pukahun, I think, and the other was 7 Pukahun. It was weird. It was 1 and 7, almost like for the movie Agent 41, that assassin.
Oh, okay.
Each child had a number, not a name. Kind of reminded me of that in a way, whereas they weren't given names by their creators, they were given numbers. I go off on a tangent, but it's kind of, why would you name a child 1 and 1 7? If they were twins, wouldn't it be 1 and 2?
You'd think.
Thing 1 and thing 2? But anyway, so 1 had children, and he had twins. So Um, it doesn't specify an amount of time, but we'll just say years later, his twins were playing the ball game. They loved it just as much as their father. That pissed off the lords of the underworld. So they challenged them to a game. But the boys knew what happened to their dad and uncle. So they sent a mosquito. There's lots of them in South America and Central America. Sent a mosquito to spy, and the mosquito came back and told them all the tricks, all the answers to all the questions that they were going to be asked, everything about what was going to happen when they got down there. So when they got down there, they were able to beat the gods of the underworld and save their father. Doesn't say anything about their uncle, but they were able to save their father, and the creator gods were so pleased that they basically, their father was reborn, and he grew out of the cracks of the earth, kind of like a plant does. And it happened to be a corn stalk.
Huh.
So he became the Lord of Maize. And then as a reward, because apparently the underworld gods were causing problems for the creator gods. I wouldn't know why. The brothers, the second set of brothers, were given deity status and made the sun and the moon. So they would always be looking over their peoples. It's fascinating stories. I mean, just it's the way I just like it. I can't wait to get into the Aztecs. Probably very similar. So Hunahpu is the maize god. Apuk, the god of death, and the underworld realm of Shibaba, would appear as a visage of decay and catastrophe, a skeletal harbinger of mortality.
So basically
similar
like
to
the Death Reaper.
Yeah, similar to the Reaper. And then, is that Ek Chuaj? Well, I didn't spell Apuk. So Apuk is A-H space P-U-C-H. Kind of like poop mopeds, and not. And then Ek Chuaj, E-K space C-H-U-A-J. God of warfare, commerce, which is an interesting mix.
Mm.
But of course, after you dominate a land and take everything they've got, you then sell it. Or them. Because, I mean, slavery and sacrifice was big in...
Set the rules for business.
Yep. And god of the cacao harvest. A very sacred, chocolate and cocoa came from...
But there is
Central
a difference between cacao and cocoa or chocolate.
Not really. It comes from the same bean.
They come from the same
and it's not sweetened.
bean, but
theirs is not sweetened.
But there is a difference.
Okay.
If you've ever tasted cacao,
I have.
well, then you should know there's a difference between cacao and chocolate.
Yeah, it's unsweetened completely.
And
It's not bitter. It's just...
It's unsweetened.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah. It's yummy, actually. He was often portrayed, bearing a satchel and a spear. Like, I'm going to hold my money and you come after my money, you get in the spear.
Well, I was thinking... I'm sorry.
Just the constant on one...
I'm sorry.
OCD, don't forget. Me,
I was
OCD.
thinking more along the lines of like a spear fisherman with his bag.
Oh, but there's that too. But I mean, if he's the god of warfare, I was thinking like, you touch my bag of gold, I'm gonna fillet you.
Mm.
Is that H-Tab?
Actually, we're on Kinnick. How?
Sounds almost Hawaiian.
Kinich space Ahau. The sun god, often incarnated as a powerful ruler or a jaguar.
Well, they worship the jaguar.
Yes, he ruled over music and poetry, giving creative inspiration.
That's an interesting mix.
It is. Maybe he sang them the song of his people. But yes, now we are on Ishtab.
Ishtab?
That's what I'm going to go with.
Okay. And she's what?
The goddess of the gallows.
Death. Or suicide.
Intertwined with suicide, guiding the souls of those who chose this path.
A god of suicide. But enough said on that. Because we don't want you, I don't personally want you worshiping to Ishtab for that reason. We've already uploaded a video about that, so we're not going to get into that again. I'm not, anyway. And then there's Bolan Zakab. Zakab. BOLON space TZACAB. Apparently he had a leafy nasal appendage that would come. So, I imagine they probably talk like this, but he was another god of agriculture. I don't mean to make fun. I apologize if any Mayan descendants watch this. I'm not trying to make fun. He was another god of agriculture. Again, specifically maize. They had a lot of gods.
Maize was huge.
Well, maize is what created them. It was sacred. The gods created them through maize. There's the mythos and stories are amazing. So they're the creator gods wanting to create a being that had a heart and a mind and could interact with them and worship them. Tried wood, tried clay. There were like 3 different things that they tried. I think one was stone, and the whatever they created from those did not last, did not work, and they sent 4 creatures out. I know definitely one was a raven. Again, interesting, a raven. Odin had 2 ravens that he would send out in the morning. They would encompass and circle the entire earth and come back to him in the afternoon, which is an interesting concept. How would 2 birds circle the earth and come back within a few hours and tell him everything that was going on in Midgard? Anyway, so there was a raven, a fox, and a rabbit, but I don't remember the 4th one. They sent them all out and told them to find something to help us create mankind. And all of them came back with maize.
And if I remember the story correctly, because it's been a couple decades since the last time I read it, they actually tried creating man with mud, but it was too soft. It couldn't survive. Then they tried wood, but it was too hard and arrogant. They gave it too much knowledge, so they had to wipe it out. And then they tried clay, but it was too hard but stupid. They took too much knowledge away from it. And then they sent out the 4 creatures who brought back the maize, and it was the perfect consistency, and they were able to put in the perfect amount of knowledge to where we still needed them but weren't completely dependent.
Right.
because that was part of it with the wood creatures. They didn't need the gods at all.
Right.
With the clay creatures, I think they were too reliant on the gods, and they were like, "Well, no, this is too much."
Right.
But each time, I think it was with the wood creatures, they have a myth about a flood of maple syrup.
Well, they all have a myth about a flood.
Well, no, but that this particular flood was maple syrup.
That's an interesting way to go.
Right? If I'm remembering it correctly. It's, like I said, it's been a couple decades since I read that myth. I wish I still had the book
right.
that I read it
well,
in.
they're so, and it even, I think they're interchangeable. Like,
right.
I mean, one god could be male and female, or neither.
Or both.
So,
but anyway.
And then you've got different cultures, completely different cultures,
right.
with similar descriptions of the serpent god, the
right.
feathered serpent
right.
god. I think even the Inca, I think they even have a serpent god. Anyway, so Bolan Zacab.
That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, BOLON TZACAB. Oh no, that's the one I just talked about.
Yeah.
The leafy nasal appendage. That just imagining that. Just sorry. Hunabku. Also another supreme deity. Like how many supreme deities do you need, and how many supreme deities could live and interact with
How many supreme deities does it take to change a light bulb?
Or the ultimate creator. He was the gatekeeper to the otherworldly realms.
And also part of the creation story.
But gatekeeper to the otherworldly realms, there are several belief systems that put the afterlife into levels or realms of
Don't the Mormons also do that?
Yes, yes, they do. But I mean, they also, that Moroni stated he was from the Pleiades. Look it up. They try to deny it now, but it's there. Moving on. Bacab. The four Bacabs, celestial gods who hold up this is where I was talking about where they viewed the earth as flat. So there was a god holding up each corner. My bad, guys. Each represented a cardinal direction. And there's a lot more to them. I went into detail with some of the others. I can only go into detail on so many because there's so much info. It's fascinating. It really is. Like, if you are of Native American, Central American, South American descent, please, you will find it so fascinating. Because there was one thing that I found that talked about, there was when I was typing in Google, something came up that I didn't type in. It said, are Mayan Native Americans? Duh. That's like a dumb question. Yeah. Of course they are. But it listed the Navajo and Comanche as part of the same lineage. Yeah, there's all kinds of info out there. Huh. Which I find interesting considering they are from South and Central Mexico, or not South Mexico and then Central America, like Guatemala and El Salvador, whereas the Aztec were like northern Mexico and stretched up into areas of Mexico, New Mexico and Texas. Mm-hmm. So I find it interesting that the Navajo and Comanche were part of the Mayan. I don't know that they were calling them ancestors of, but I just found it interesting that they were put in the same conversation as the Mayans, considering how southern the Mayan were. But they were around 1,000 years before the Aztec.
Right.
According to mainstream science.
Right.
So
Gukumats.
Gukumats, Gucumatz.
Similar to Kukulkan, he embodies the feathered serpent, symbolizing creation and vitality.
So we have 3 feathered serpents. Fuck. Okay. Yeah. Is that Sepakna?
Sapakna.
They have a character like that on Stargate, don't they? That sounds familiar.
I think they've talked about him on Ancient Aliens.
Oh.
The crocodile-like entity. I think they talked about him on Ancient Aliens.
And the similarity between him and the Egyptian crocodile goddess? Okay.
Probably.
Go ahead. This bitch is bad. So we mentioned how they could be both good and evil. Like that's they were very human-like, much like the Roman and Greek gods. They had very human personality traits. They could be very beneficial and helpful, or they could fuck your day up. And this young lady
is Shell, Ixchel, the goddess of the rainbow, but should not be confused with a goddess of goodwill. The Maya apparently believed that the rainbow.
Yeah. Like I had this, I searched this on 3 different fucking pages and 3 different resources. Maybe even 4. I think maybe 4, because I did do some additional just perusing as you were trying to set up the hard drive. But they apparently
believed that rainbows are the flatulence of demons and bring bad luck and disease. And as such, this particular goddess is thought of with the same attributes as an old woman.
They called it crone in the sources, and to me I didn't want to use that word because crone to me is a very Celtic, Anglo-Saxon, Norse term, and it actually means wise old woman, whereas the way they were using it was as an evil, bitter old woman. So I didn't use that term.
However, in her benevolent form, she is aligned with water, fertility, and childbirth. She is often shown carrying a serpent.
Which I find interesting because the medical symbol,
the caduceus,
with the serpents going
the
around.
2 serpents.
Mm-hmm.
But exactly how is she carrying them? Is she like...
I did not find any images. Like I don't know if she's cradling it like a baby
or
and
if
it's
she's
suckling,
holding it by its head,
or if it's just wrapped around her arm and like Medusa, and
Yeah, that would be interesting to find out. She is the ethereal goddess of the moon, childbirth, fertility, and the healing arts. She was also viewed as the guardian of women and midwives, particularly during childbirth.
So she had a lot of positive, but had
also a lot of negative.
If I find something that is described as the flatulence of a demon, that's pretty fucking bad, because demons are eating rotten shit.
But to have rainbows be described that way?
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
Something must have happened. No, but you have to think about their culture. Like, there had to have been, like, they saw a rainbow, thought it was beautiful and amazing, and went to try to, the gold at the end of the rainbow. They wanted to find the end of the rainbow for whatever reason, and found, let's say, two cultures or two villages had just fought, and there's nothing but death at the end of the rainbow. Like, and that could have perpetuated their belief. I mean, there's all kinds of possible explanations for that.
You know why nobody could ever find the end of the rainbow, right?
Other than it doesn't exist?
Well, because there's a reason it doesn't exist. Because rainbows aren't just an arc, they're actually circular.
Yeah.
So there is no end of the rainbow.
Because it goes around. And then we have, what's that? Kakmo?
Kakmo?
Yeah, Kakmo
I'm gonna
sounds
say
better.
Kakmo.
Sounds better than Kakmo. It's C-I-N-I-C-H. Oh, excuse me, C-I. It's K-I-N-I-C-H. K-A-K-M-O. He was a solar god. He would manifest as a fiery, bright-colored macaw, and presided over the sun and warfare. And then there was Muzen Ka. Like, I'll call a cab. A-H space M-U-Z-E-N space C-A-B. I like this one. The god of bees and honey. Significant in a culture that viewed honey as both nourishment and a trade commodity.
And if you think about it, it still is.
It was, yeah, and it still is money.
Yeah.
You can trade all kinds of things for large portions of honey in many countries.
Especially if it's raw honey with
the hive,
with the comb still in it.
Yep. Oh, and we have another god of agriculture. Like, I mean, we 1, 2, or 3 aren't enough. We have Tiberius. That sounds very Greek. I don't like the way that sounds. Chibirias. Also, not just agriculture, but also associated with maize, or the maize life cycle. So, because of the creation story that the Mayan were created by the creator gods with maize, a maize paste. They crushed up the yellow and white maize and formed the first beans.
They made masa.
They formed the first beans. So maize is quite sacred to them. Like, that's one of every freaking mother-loving resource I found talked about how maize is sacred to their people, including the two women. I was about to say young ladies. They may be. They are. But at this point, 20 years later, or 10 years after they wrote the articles, they're not just young maidens. They're women. Including the 2 articles I found by the women that are of Mayan descent. Mm-hmm. Maize is hyper important to the Mayan people. And I also found that they still speak Mayan in certain areas of Central America, which I find really fucking cool. They couldn't kill it off. The fucking Catholic Church couldn't kill it off. And Spanish.
If you think about it, there's Latin is considered a dead language because nobody speaks it anymore.
Yep.
Except in Catholic churches during certain rites.
Right.
Or
it's
exorcisms.
Still a dead language. It's not a...
But it's still a dead language.
Right.
But Mayan...
is still being spoken.
Is still being spoken.
Yes, spoken, not spoke. It's not a bicycle wheel. Sorry.
Okay, so who do we have next? Oh, Akan. I like this guy.
Oh, yeah. God of wine and inebriation. Gotta love that.
So, if you are fond of the Greek pantheon, he would be basically the same as Dionysus, or in the Roman Bacchus.
Or...
what?
God of mischief.
Oh, Loki?
Loki.
I'm not sure he was so much associated with inebriation.
But he was a trickster.
Yes, he was a trickster.
He was a trickster god.
But, most of the inebriated gods are.
Yeah.
And then we have
Kisin, Kisin,
Yeah, I'd say that's probably
god of
right.
earthquakes.
Had many jaguar-like attributes, reigned as a god of the subterranean realm. Okay, the fact that he's associated with earthquakes means I don't like him.
It means he's a destructive, well, or a creator god. Like I could not. There were 4 different gods listed in some, 6 as I mentioned earlier, and others, but I could not find one resource that mentioned them all. Well, I found one, and then something happened with my computer, and I could not get back to that page. So after that, I couldn't find them anymore. But in order to create, you must destroy. You can't plant the crop without plowing
tilling the land.
Tilling the land.
And I get that, but as somebody who grew up in Southern California, I don't like earthquakes.
Yeah, well,
which means
California's going to
them.
drop off onto the ocean eventually anyway, just like Florida, where I grew up. They're both going to, like, Disney will be underwater. Everything north of Disney might survive.
Yeah, but see, here, there's kind of a difference, though. California is going to drop off because of earthquakes.
Completely, yes.
Whereas Florida is just going to be taken over by swampland.
Which is what it was originally.
So it's
Swampland.
just going to sink.
It's going to sink.
But, you like...
Yeah, kind of like Venice is doing. And they've been trying to, like, they have these, the movie, what movie was that? One of the, wasn't it one of the Ocean's movies, like Ocean 13 or Ocean 12? They were going in to steal something, and they had to take into account that the buildings are sinking, and when they went under, there were actually, like, the government has set up things to keep the
I don't know. I've never seen any of those.
I mean, it could have all been fictitious, but it makes sense to me. If everything is sinking into the water, you would want to lift it up.
Right. But either way, I've never seen any of those Ocean's movies.
The first one was good. The rest of them were okay. I mean, you know, it's Brad Pitt and fucking what's his name?
George Clooney. Yeah, not a big fan of either one of them.
Anyway, so out of the 250 odd gods of the Mayan pantheon, that is just a brief taste of them, and just a scratching of the surface of the stories and mythos behind them. There are so many myths that really kind of hint at otherworldly beings and not like gods per se.
Right.
But they, of course, considered them gods because they were so far technologically advanced from them. There's a famous quote that, you know, technology is magic to any civilization that has no technology, or
Yes.
something to that effect.
Something to that effect.
But anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope it's piqued an interest to where you start searching. I definitely dare you to search the sarcophagus of Pakal, Lord Pakal, and specifically find images that have been colorized, because it helps a lot more to differentiate.
It definitely does.
Like, you can definitely see, if you open your eyes and open your mind to the way I described it earlier in this video, you could see it. But if you find a colorized, like there are tapestries available for sale. I'm not quoting any particular vendor. No. However, if you look at the tapestries that have been created and compare them to pictures of the actual sarcophagus, you'll see that they're the same, but the colorized versions actually make everything pop.
Yes.
And jump out at it's obvious. There's breathing apparatus, there's flames coming, and even the vessel that he's in, like it's straight, and then it starts to curve like this. Which is typical of some kind of rocket or
spaceship
or something. Definitely not an image that I would expect would be on a sarcophagus of a living God ascending to the heavens.
Right.
Unless he's ascending to another ship. But anyway, that's the Mayan pantheon. Are we going to do Japanese or Aztec next?
So we're going to be doing Japanese next.
Oh, wait. Litha.
But we also have Litha coming up.
That's in 21, or yeah, literally 20 days.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing...
When do you want to do Litha?
Not next, but like the one after next.
Okay.
So if you are listening to our podcast and you would like to let us, we're asking you, like, because we're going to tell y'all how we celebrate Litha and give some inspirations, but we would also like to know if you already celebrate Litha. What do you do to celebrate Litha?
Absolutely. We're going to have lots of suggestions. Most of them, all of them, could be either with a family, with children, or not.
Right.
So, I don't recommend children jumping over a bonfire.
No.
I'm saying that right now as a disclaimer. That's not part of our suggestion. Although that is one of the things that they do. It's kind of like May Day. They did that in May Day too.
Yeah, they had a whole thing about jumping over bonfires. Yeah.
Our ancestors really liked
bonfires. They really loved their
bonfires. They love their freaking bonfires and sex. Because this is one where May Day you could be bonded to somebody for a year, like a temporary basis.
A year and a day, right.
This is not that. Litha is one where it is like June weddings.
If you got...
The idea of getting married in June...
So basically at Beltane, if you decided after that year and a day that you wanted to be permanently bonded, then at Litha, you were permanently bonded, and that...
Which is where, again, the concept or idea of June weddings came from. It's just fascinating how we have integrated things into our culture without even realizing. Anyway, we love you. Peace.
And we hope to hear from you. Hit that fan mail button. Let us know how you celebrate Litha so we can read it on air.
Absolutely.
And share it with other people who might be a little short on inspiration. But until then, peace out, witches. We love you, and we hope you stay safe. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, in western states or any state where it gets hot, stay cool.
Drink lots of water.
Yes. Till next time.
Good night.
Peace out.